Alrighty, welcome back to the Natty News Daily podcast. We are here with the best female natural bodybuilder in the world right now, Natalie Hays. How are you doing, Natalie?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for that intro. Feels weird to hear someone say that, but I guess it's what it is. So,
Given your resume and the number of shows you proved yourself at, I think I can say that pretty confidently. So, um, why don't we start with just a general background of yourself, where you started competing, how you got into bodybuilding, and we'll go from there before we get into your record-breaking season.
yeah, so I got started in fitness into like working out in high school. I played basketball, and then my dad kind of was always into fitness, so he tried to get me into lifting in high school, and I did it for a little bit with my brother and him, and then I kind of got that like feeling of I was getting too big. I thought my shoulders were getting kind of bulky, and so I stopped. Looking back, I wish I'd kept with it through high school, but after high school, I hurt my knee, so I couldn't really play basketball anymore, and that's kind of when I think like a lot of ex-athletes like looked for another outlet to like do something physical. So I had to do physical therapy for my knee, and then from there, like the beginning of college, I got back into lifting, and then things just progressively snowballed and I became more and more obsessive and kind of addictive about it. And so the last 2 or 3 years have been like real bodybuilding focused, I would say. And the last couple years, like, is where the nutrition started to really dial in for me. I've been training probably about 6 or 7 or 8 years in total, maybe. But, those first four, we all, I think, kind of don't really know exactly what we're doing and everything. So the last couple years have been like really when I've been like dialed in like bodybuilder style.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, I think a lot of us find it's just like a progression that's over time you just get more and more. It's not just like at least a snap of a finger all of a sudden. Now I'm a bodybuilder, right? It's kind of a progression. At least that's for me. But
Yeah,
is
for
that
sure.
how you made, because you mentioned about originally you're like, I don't want to get too big, and now you're like, I want to get as jacked as possible,
Yeah.
right? And competing in women's bodybuilding, right? So how did that transition occur? Was that also like a slow transition, or how did you kind of break out of that?
Yeah, so I don't know. I always just kind of trained like a bodybuilder. I never like avoided upper body or avoided things like that. Like, so I've always trained chest, I've always trained arms, I've always trained every body part. That's just kind of what I did.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess it was just kind of like natural for me to grow as a bodybuilder in that way. Um, and that was just kind of my dad got me started. He had me doing bench, trying for pull-ups and things. So like right from the get, I was doing like upper body, and he didn't even start me doing like squats, and he had me doing front squats and stuff. But I was more like doing upper body things and like shoulder press and bench press before I even really got into the lower body stuff. So I think it just kind of was ingrained in me from the start. And then obviously that fear of getting too big just kind of fell by the wayside as I became more obsessive with the gym and just, yeah, just train like a bodybuilder, train every body part.
Gotcha. So it sounds like your dad was a big influence on getting you into things, and he wanted you doing everything. Because that was kind of a little bit more of a stigma about women lifting, maybe I'd say 10, 15 years ago. It's really shifted, which I'm happy to see. But is that what you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, you always it was always like, yeah, women like weren't real big into it. I mean, you have like the Corey Everson and Rachel McLeish and all that, but then it kind of
Yeah.
seemed to fall off. And like even I, was influenced by that. Oh, you'll get manly, you'll get too big in the beginning, kind of.
Yeah.
Um, that was just kind of the narrative that was out there. There wasn't a whole lot of like fit, muscular women who looked like feminine still. Um, so but yeah, I just kind of started working out and just kept rolling with it and just kind of ignored that becoming too big idea, and just now I'm trying to get as big as possible. So
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So, before you started getting into competing, was before I jump in, was this year your first competitive season?
very
I think I
first
saw you on an
competitive.
NPC stage early before you.
Yeah, I started competing this year. My first show was in June, and that was my
Okay,
very first time competing ever, was this year. And
okay,
I hadn't really thought of it before, to be honest. Like, I just was like training and going through the whole lifestyle of bodybuilding, but I was always kind of afraid to diet because I was so obsessive about adding weight to the bar and in the gym. And then you also hear that noise about, oh, as you when you diet, you're gonna lose strength, you're gonna lose size, especially as a natural. So I was like, well, gosh, I don't know if I want to do that and lose all this progress I'm making in the gym, right? So eventually I just kind of got to this weight of like 165 pounds is where I started the diet for this competition season, and that was back in August. So like a year and a half ago is kind of
August
when I
of
started.
2022.
Yeah. And I
Okay,
just was like, on a whim, I was like, I'm just gonna start dieting because I was eating a lot of food, like 4,200 calories roughly to maintain that. Um, yeah, so my were pretty high, and I
how many
almost got
grams
to the
of
point of
how many grams
like,
of carbs is that? That's got to be 700 or 800. It's gonna be close to 700 or 800, depending on how high your fat is, I guess.
yeah, I could go that high in carbs, but I like nuts and nut butters and stuff, so my fats were pretty high. I think my carbs were probably around 600 maybe. And pretty fairly high in fat at that time, but
Probably 100-ish, probably, if I had to guess.
yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So that's kind of when I just figured like I felt like I had built enough, and I was like, let's see like what I've actually built underneath the body fat. And so I just started cutting calories here and there. And at first, those first like 4 or 5 months, it was a couple pounds a month, real slow. And then at the beginning of the year in January, I just kept dieting and cutting more calories and following my training and everything as I normally would. And then things just happened to line up where I was stage ready, I guess, around June when these shows started happening.
Okay. And then before we get into the actual shows, you're self-coached, correct?
Yeah. I've like learned from all you
Yeah.
guys and all the people out there, but I'm
That was
doing
my
everything
question.
without
Is
help.
is you obviously had a good, base of knowledge and understanding of what to do with things, between like eating in a calorie surplus to continue to add muscle. And especially for women, I think that can probably be difficult to do that. But you had that checked off. You gave yourself tons of time to diet, not taking it off too aggressively. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
who were some of the influences, and how did you come to that um approach, or just in general approaches?
Yeah, so I guess some of it was just intuition, and it just things just like coincidentally lined up with my dieting. I didn't like plan, oh, it's gonna take I'm 20 weeks out. It just kind of all lined
Yeah.
up, that the stars aligned or whatever.
Okay.
But
Did you have that
um
timeline in mind then, or you were just like, I'm gonna start dieting, and then once I
yeah,
start seeing that I'm
I didn't
close?
research any shows or do anything like that. I was like, just back in the summer, I was like, let's just start dieting. I don't
Yeah.
know why.
Okay.
I was just like, let's just start and see. And then the
Okay.
timing
Okay.
just all happened to be right. But as far as like learning from people, um, like Eric Helms, all the 3DMJ guys, Alberto, I've listened to all of their stuff, Revive Stronger, Steve Hall, all the people he interviews. Lyle McDonald has been a huge person that I've gone to and listened to for nutrition and fat loss and all of that, and Dr. Scott Stevenson and training. And then, everyone learns and kind of, I guess, copycats Arnold and all those enhanced guys, which as I progressed learned wasn't the best because it doesn't necessarily apply what they're doing to natural lifters as well. But that's kind of, I think, where most people start um gaining the information, just because they're more out there, I think, than the natural bodybuilding side. I feel like is a little more niche. So it took
Yeah.
me a little bit to find my way and find the right people who I felt knew how to do it naturally and without enhancements.
Yeah, I was gonna say you found a lot of the right people that are very knowledgeable and know what they're doing. A lot of people that I respect and our peers at this point, and really know what they're talking about. So how did you get exposed to some of them? Was it just
I
through
think it's
social
just
media
became
or
I just like my desire to like improve and learn. I think I just kind of, and Charles Poliquin and Christian Thibodeau, and I don't know, I just kind of like you find one person and then you find who they learned from kind of, and then I just kind of started finding all these people. And I guess it was just because I became passionate about it and just
yeah.
kind of, I don't know, it just was something that I was interested in, and I would read T Nation and go on all there and read all those articles, and you find the different authors, and I don't know, I would just go down these like wormholes occasionally and find new people and just kept reading and researching and
Content consuming. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But a lot of technical content, that's super cool. So it obviously led you down a good path. So when did you pull the trigger on that show, that June show? And I think that was an NPC show, correct? When did
It
you
was
decide like I'm ready?
yeah.
And how did you decide
Probably,
that?
yeah, so probably like a few weeks before the show happened,
Hmm.
I was like, you know, why not? Like, I think I'm in shape. I don't know. Obviously, I wasn't in as good a shape as I started to get later on. But I was like, there had been shows a little bit earlier. There was a show in May, that I was thinking about doing, but I wasn't like ready and I needed to get a suit, and I didn't realize you have to like order your competition suits like way in advance. So I was like,
Way in advance, like months.
yeah, so I was
Give yourself
like, "Oh,
months
I'm
to get
doing
your
the
suit.
show in like a week. Can I get a suit?" And it's like 6 to 8 weeks like lead time for all these things. So I had to get like a practice suit and stuff. So yeah, I just kind of decided like pretty last minute, and it was relatively close to my house. And um yeah, I just jumped in the show, and then that got the ball rolling with things.
You're in that show, if I remember seeing the photos.
Sorry.
Did you compete in figure in that show? Was it
Yeah,
figure you did in that show?
so when I was doing the NPC shows, I did multiple
Yeah.
NPC shows. I was competing as figure and women's physique for that.
Okay, figure and women's physique. Nice,
Yeah.
nice. So had you had been, I assume, based on how you did at the end of the season, which again we'll get to, you were practicing your posing. It sounds like, I'm guessing, at least throughout that entire prep. If you want to call it prep, I'll call it prep.
No, I wasn't.
Really?
Yeah. So being like a first timer, like I didn't do any posing at all. And even I don't to me, I feel like it's kind of obvious, but people haven't really said much about my posing, but I didn't really practice outside of doing the competitions themselves, and like maybe in my bathroom like quarter turns. But that was about it. I didn't really practice as much as I probably should have, but
That's actually very surprising to me, because I thought you posed very well, and even I watched the Worlds live stream, and I thought you actually had an edge in posing, which that surprises me a lot. I would not have guessed that. I would have guessed you were pretty well practiced.
yeah, so hearing people say that, I'm like shocked that I'm getting compliments on posing, because knowing how little like I actually tried and practiced, it's yeah.
Yeah, because even like I'm sure I'm guessing I'm not the only one, because I actually had that conversation, because when I was watching, I was messaging my friend Christine, who was streaming in too, and she was like, yeah, and we were talking back and forth. We were both agreeing, like, yeah, the way that Natalie's hitting, I think it was in the side chest, was just much better presentation of just your physique and muscularity, and I think it gave you a big edge. So is it just natural to you, just how things feel, how it feels to open up, and just from seeing yourself in the mirror and just kind of playing around, or
Yeah, I guess it just is kind of like I'm just naturally, and like I've seen the magazines and have some of the old school magazines and stuff, but I guess just doing the mandatories just felt pretty natural. It
yeah,
was a little bit difficult though, like navigating, because some of the shows I competed in later on was like open hand, like arms out, like more feminine,
yeah,
like with the OCB, and then for the other shows, it was like, for WNBF, it was closed fist, like side chest, more of like the traditional men's style. And so I was
yeah,
like trying to have to like adjust on the fly with that because I was used to doing it the other way before. So, yeah, and I didn't practice really either, to like the new style. So yeah, I guess it's just like came to me a little bit naturally, maybe just being more athletic, or I don't know, growing up, maybe just that body awareness, I guess.
yeah. It's that would be my guess, would be just overall body awareness, because it doesn't come naturally to everyone. It's not something for me. It's not supernatural to me. That's actually, I get shit for that all the time, that I need to work on my posing. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's an area, but probably the biggest area of improvement I can make, is I'm pretty good in the day-to-day stuff, but the posing. So, um, yeah, I mean, that's really impressive, that, the way that you're able to present and have an understanding of your body. And how did you select categories then? Because you did figure and physique in your first show. That was NPC.
Yeah.
How did you decide, like, I want to do figure or physique, and or was that first show like, yeah, let me see how I do in both? I mean, that was an untested show, so it's a little bit of a different animal, but
Yeah. So with the untested, I was like, they allow you to do crossover. So I figured, like,
yeah,
let's just see which one I fit more. I was thinking going into it, like, obviously, especially with it being untested, like, knowing that figure was probably where I would size wise and just like
yeah,
being natural would probably be better in. But as I like competed, I realized that like these figure girls, with like the way my like torso is, and some of these girls just have insane backs. Like their lats insert so low and they're shorter and a little bit like more compact. Um, so in doing those first few shows, I never really thought like I wanted to go the figure route, and especially with the way I train, I don't train like a figure girl. I train like a bodybuilder. So I felt like it was also kind of a waste to not do those like women's physique categories, because I'm training shoulders, I'm training chest, arms, and I feel like in figure you're not even judged with that. So it's kind of felt strange. Um, so with the NPC, I was doing both, and then it just kind of seemed like I never really even considered figure for the natural side, just because I don't know, bodybuilding just felt, in like physique or whatever they call it, just felt more like what I wanted to do.
gotcha. And what drew you to doing the natural shows then from there? Because you did, what, I think, was it two NPC shows, and then competed? I'm guessing competed with the OCB, because you did the Yorton.
Yeah, so I did I did three NPC shows, and then I did a fourth NPC show. I went to nationals with
Okay,
the
so you did four
NPC.
NPC. Okay, you did a bunch of NPC shows. Okay,
Yeah, because there was one, and then there was one 2 weeks later right by my house. And then there was a third, and then there was nationals, which one of the shows I did prior qualified me to go to nationals, and they like comped it or something. So I figured like I'm in shape, I'm doing these
go
shows, like
for it.
let's just do it.
Yeah,
Um, so I did those four, and then I didn't plan. I like wanted to do some natural shows, but when I first was competing, I wasn't sure that I would because I knew they were later on in the year and like not I wasn't sure if I would still be dieting, if I would still be in
Yeah.
shape, so I didn't really have them in my mind to do them. Um, but after nationals was at the end of July, there was a natural show the beginning of August, so the next weekend. And so because I was obviously still in shape and had just done a show, I was like, it's what's one more week, right?
Yeah.
Um, and there
Look
was
what that
also an
turned into.
NPC show that weekend, but I decided I'd done so many of those, like what's that? What's the point in doing another one?
Yeah.
So there was the OCB, I think it was called the Slayer on August 5th, and that was my first experience with natural bodybuilding.
Okay. And I'm women's physique in that show because I think that's the most muscular category in OCB, right?
Yeah,
Is women's
so
physique.
for that show, I actually competed in figure
Oh, you did
because
figure. Okay.
yeah, I did figure, and the only reason I did figure there was to hopefully qualify and get my pro card because there wasn't
Competitor
enough
accounts.
girls in the women's physique category to do that.
Yeah, that's something that is unfortunately pretty common. You know, the women's physique,
Yeah.
women's bodybuilding. A lot of turnouts are really hit or miss. It seemed to have improved this year, and I'm glad you're doing your part to kind of bring some life into that category. I think you are bringing some life into that category. So, okay, that's interesting. I would not have guessed that. So, but you still were like you wanted to do women's physique, and you're like, but you're
Yeah,
like,
I
I
just
want to get a pro card here. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to have something come of it, so I did figure in order to get the pro card. Yeah.
Okay. So what was your thought after that show? Because you're like, oh, one more week, and then like, okay, I
Yeah,
won my
so
pro card. Now what? Right?
yeah, so after that, that was a fun experience. I mean, it was much different than the NPC shows as far as like backstage environment and everything, but the crowd there was like really like boisterous and lively. I think there was like a few influencers competing in that show on the men's side, and they brought like
Okay.
their friends were in the crowd and they were screaming and cheering, and so that was
That's
new
fun.
and fun. Um, so that was an enjoyable experience there. And then yeah, so after that, I didn't really think of doing
What
the Yorton Cup.
timeline was that show? What timeline was that show? Just so
That was the beginning of August.
beginning of August. Okay.
Yeah, and then the Yorton Cup,
September,
I
right?
think was like September 20th or something.
Okay.
So it was about like 2 months time period. And so again, I was like, well, that's a long time for me to continue
Yeah.
doing this.
How
So
were you feeling at that point in time?
I was feeling, I think, pretty good.
You
Um,
still got the blinders on a little bit, but I'm assuming, but
yeah. I mean, after, because I had been doing all these shows and a lot of them were like only a couple weeks apart, so it was pretty easy to stay motivated and to stay
yeah.
in prep and to like keep just getting better.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm more so talking just physically, like the tolls
yeah.
of the diet and getting that lean, right?
Yeah, so physically I was feeling pretty good. And I felt honestly pretty good throughout the whole thing. Um, I know people are probably kind of annoyed to maybe hear that, but maybe I'm just like I've been dieting for so long I kind of don't remember how it feels to be more normal, but there was a point I think right around that August time period where or a little before that where my workouts did take like a significant hit, which that really frustrated me because my strength was maintaining pretty well for a while, and then there was that point where I kind of hit a wall with my training and reps dropped, weight dropped quite a bit in certain lifts, and that was a kind of a hard mental struggle for me. That time period adjusting to, oh, I used to squat this for 5 and now I can't do it for 1. So that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
difficult. Navigating that like month or so of like my workouts. But once I pushed through that, um, things seemed to get back on track, and weren't too terrible after that.
Were you still digging at that point in time too?
Yeah, I was still dieting and
Yeah.
still losing weight as my shows went on. Yeah.
Yeah, that was what I was asking exactly. Okay, so you decided, okay, I'm gonna do the Yorton now. So how was that experience? What were your expectations going into the Yorton? Did you have any? Or you're like, let's see how this
No.
goes?
Yeah, I had none really, and again, it was like a super last minute decision for me to do the Yorton. Like all the shows I basically did, I was either late registered or like everything I did was like last minute because I was just like, I don't know if I'm still in shape, I guess I'll do it. And I don't know if I'll be in shape, so I'm gonna wait till the last minute and then hopefully I'll be in shape, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, going into the Yorton, I was a little bit nervous because this was my first time traveling to a show and having to fly. And so I was, you hear about water retention on flights and, you know, I'm not really knowing how to peak like to a specific degree yet. I'm just kind of showing up at these shows, maybe lowering my carbs for a few days before, but I'm not
Lowering them.
manipulating. Yeah.
You're rather than loading.
Yeah, cuz I didn't load into any of my shows.
Interesting.
Um I, like at
I
least
mean, you won your show, so like it worked.
yeah, I did like higher carbs maybe like 5 days, 4 days out, but
Okay,
then
so
like
you're
the
doing more of like
days
a front
leading
you were
to
doing more of like a front
more of
load
a
approach a
front
little
load
bit.
style. And I could
Okay.
have probably played around with it more considering I did all these shows, but I was a little nervous too. So I kind of just
Yeah.
did the same thing.
Did the same protocol. Yeah, that makes sense. If it ain't broke,
Yeah.
don't fix it. Yeah.
Um, I think maybe I could have been a little better had I done more carbs and things looking back. In kind of coming out of these shows, seeing how I'm looking with more carbs and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, so back to the Yorton, I did that. I had to travel with all my food. I flew in like the day before, last minute
Oh
flight.
wow. That's
And then yeah, and then I flew out the same day of the Yorton that night and got home.
oh
So it
my
all
God.
happened so quickly that it just kind of was almost as if it didn't happen. Like I was
This
there and
go, go,
back.
go. The like for like 48 hours straight.
Yeah, I was there and back and I didn't expect to win and there was so many girls there that was I was also
Yeah.
surprised. That was the biggest show of all the shows I've done. There was 24 of us.
Oh wow.
Uh three different height classes and each height class had like 7 or 8 girls in it and I was in the tallest height class for that. Um but yeah, there was 24 girls total and then the top 3 from each height class ended up being in the final 9, I think. And yeah, I won that and then
You
yeah,
just did the
I got
blur, but what
home.
did that feel like to hear your name called for the Yorton Cup?
Yeah, it was pretty like shocking, honestly. Like I didn't backstage, I look at all these other girls and I thought, "Oh, this girl's like really big." Like I thought maybe these other people would win. And everyone always asks me like, "Did you expect it? How do you think?" And it's a difficult question to answer, especially I don't know if you've been on stage and compete and people have asked you, but like you can't see, how you compare to the other people while you're up there.
Yeah, you can't, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so when someone asks you like, "Oh, how do you think you did?" It's like, "Well, I don't really know what the other girls look like." So until you see video, or photo,
Yeah.
um,
Gotcha, yeah. And you
it's
see
hard
people
to say.
backstage, it's like you don't see them pose and flexing and under this lights. It's different. It is different. So yeah, you can see somebody backstage even that looks super jacked. You're like, oh my God, that guy's jacked. And you see him on stage and he's just not in condition, right? Versus the guy that, oh,
Yeah.
that guy looks a little, he looks good, but he looks a little stringy. And then he poses and it's like, oh, wow. Wow. Sort of thing. So yeah, I've
Yeah,
definitely had seen
so
that.
yeah, so I didn't expect to win and then I won and afterwards I kind of felt a little bit melancholy almost. I wasn't as joyful or like on this extreme high like many people, might expect or think, but maybe it was just like so much emotion at once. But
Yeah.
after I won, I just I went out to the steps of the theater and I just ate my next chicken meal with, rice cakes, and just was like waiting around and getting ready to go back home on my flight. And yeah, I just kind of felt this sense of like a little bit of sadness for some reason. I don't know. It was kind of like strange, but
Like a sense of like, wow, I got to the mountaintop, but I wasn't even sure if I was going to get to the mountaintop, like sort of thing. Like,
just like
and
I
and
was,
now what, or what was that like?
yeah, it just kind of felt like, yeah, now what, almost. And, I was there by myself, and, um, it's like it all happens, but then now it's
Yeah,
over. And you're just back to being a bodybuilder and back to normalcy, Um, so I guess it was just maybe the come down seemed so quick.
yeah,
You win, you're on stage, and then you're off, and that's it, kind of.
yeah. Yeah, and I've had some of that experience traveling to shows solo. It's a different experience than like being with people or knowing people, and you kind of went there on your own. Did you know a lot of the other athletes, or none at all?
I didn't know anybody.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's I can see how that experience would be. I don't I wouldn't say isolating. I don't know if that's the right word, but that's that's
Yeah,
interesting.
a little bit isolating. I've kind of done that on my own. I've been a little self-isolated,
Yeah,
kind
I
of to
feel
my own fault,
that.
just being a bodybuilder. But yeah, it was kind of shocking, and then I just like a numb kind of feeling from that one. But it does get better, and I did start to feel more
Yeah,
in the moment as it went on, as the season went on. Yeah.
gotcha. Okay, so then from that, you pulled yourself kind of quote unquote out of the hole, which I based on how you reacted after the show, I'm guessing you didn't like overeat or anything like that. And you're like,
No, yeah,
okay,
I got home on my flight. Took the flight home. I got home, I think around midnight, ate a meal, and then went to the gym.
right back at it.
Yeah.
So then when did you register for Mr. America too? Because I know that that's a show that Mark likes to have people register very early. So
Yeah,
you probably had to
so
pull his leg a little bit on that. Although after winning the Yorton, maybe not. But
yeah, so for the Mr. America, I didn't even really know that it existed, and I didn't know that it was specifically a natural show either. Like being into this, I know there's like so many different natural organizations, so I was still finding things and
yeah,
finding organizations and shows as I was, looking and becoming and winning shows. Um so I found out about it, and I reached out to him, and registration had already closed, I think. By the time I like became aware of it and reached out. But he was gracious enough, Mark, to communicate with me and say, no, you can still sign up and just pay the late fee or whatever, and we'll get you in. And with that show, I toggled a little bit more back and forth with it just based off of like getting there. I thought the logistics of it was a little bit harder coming from Arizona. It's
fly
like
into Philly.
yeah, so I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna have to fly into Philly and then take a bus or a train and to get to Atlantic City, and it just seemed all like, yeah, it just seemed like a lot. Um, but my dad and I we had a friend back there who we know who lives in Jersey, and my dad reached out to him and connected with him, and so he said, oh, I can pick Natalie up from the airport and drive her from the Philly airport to Atlantic City. So I was like, okay, well, if he's willing to do that, our friend, um I guess like that makes it easier. I don't know how long he's going to be back in Jersey, like, so this will be the year if I'm ever going to do this show, like this is the year to do it. um so that's how that kind of landed. But again, that was all last minute decision making, last minute flights and everything.
So did you have any thoughts? You obviously entered women's bodybuilding there. Did you have any thoughts of other categories, or just like no, that was pretty straightforward decision?
Yeah, I was either women's bodybuilding or women's physique. Um, but they weren't offering women's
Yeah,
physique
they don't
this
have
year.
physique. Yeah, yeah.
So I just was like, okay, I'm fine with bodybuilding if that's what they're offering.
Gotcha, gotcha. So walk me through what was your experience with Mr. America walking into, because I've competed there. I was there this year. Obviously, we met briefly
Yeah.
backstage. What was your thoughts in it, like taking that in, walking into that venue and uh, the casino and all the fun, all the hoopla.
Yeah, so that one was interesting again, going to the meeting was something that the Yorton didn't have. So being at the athletes meeting the night before, seeing how many competitors there were, talking with a few people, waiting for the tan, um, all of that was nice and, getting to meet and see other athletes. Because at the Yorton Cup, it was like certain categories of certain times. So I didn't really cross paths with many competitors other than the women's
Cohort. I
figure and
competed
the
at the Yorton
women's
and
physique girls.
I competed at Yorton in 21, and yeah, it was very much broken up like in a
Mhm.
cohort. So you didn't get to mingle with like a lot of the athletes in other categories unless you're in the same, cohort, right?
Yeah.
So okay.
Yeah. So that was interesting and fun at Mr. America. And then yeah, the theater was nice and the whole backstage area waiting around. It kind of became a little bit of a long day that I wasn't used to.
It was a long
Um,
day.
so I should have
You probably see the
maybe
bags under
brought
my
more
eyes by the end of
meals.
it. Yeah.
Yes,
And
so
I
I
can't
got a
imagine
little
for
bit
you. Yeah.
I didn't bring as much food or as much water that I probably should have, not thinking it was gonna go so long.
Yeah.
Um,
Did that
but
bother
yeah,
you?
like
Because you're like a very prepared person and in general, it
yeah,
seems like.
I
So
did
did that
start to get a little bit irritable kind of back there, waiting around and a little bit hangry maybe and just kind of a little frustrated. But there's nothing I can do and everyone is waiting. We're all waiting, so
yeah.
it's fair
If I would
game
have
and
known you, you could have come to our little table and be like, Dan, can you get me some rice cakes?
yeah, I had a
That's
little bit of food. It was just like trying to wait, when should I eat it? I don't know. So it was just,
yeah, trying to time that everything.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a challenge. That's a challenge. So, again, did you have any expectations going into that? Were you like, okay, well, I won the Yorton, so I can win here, or what was the thought about
Um,
that?
so I didn't really have any expectations here either, but I was, I guess, more hopeful or a little bit more positive about doing well because I had
Yeah,
looked at I tried to this time look at years prior and just kind of get a feel for what these women's bodybuilders look like to see how I might stack up. But again,
yeah,
it's hard,
because
just from
that's your first women's bodybuilding show, right? So,
yeah, so I tried to find, some stuff at years past and I thought, well, my physique looks like it could be competitive maybe. So I kind of thought, but I didn't go in thinking, oh, I'm going to win or I'm going to dominate or anything like that. I thought I would hopefully do well.
okay, and then obviously it went very well for you. Won the Miss America title. How did that feel? Was that similar to the Yorton? Like, okay, wow, this just happened, and then like now what sort of thing, or was that more of like, oh wow, I won Miss America, this is cool. I mean, I saw you backstage, but
Yeah.
I can't see everything that's going on in your head, right?
Yeah, it
And it
was
was like it was like 11 p.m. too.
yeah, a little I think everyone was a little delusional at that point.
Yeah, I can tell. And
Yeah,
it's not
I
with you
felt
specifically, but
it was
everyone. Yeah,
yeah, it was kind of a little bit of the same, but not the same, just a little bit of the same in the sense of shock and awe almost again, not knowing how to feel, but
yeah,
feeling more respect and more proud of myself this time around, I guess.
yeah.
And just part of that also being the title, Mr. and Miss America,
Yeah,
it kind of has a little more gravitas to it than the
for
Yorton,
sure.
even though the Yorton is a great show, more, extremely competitive, and the prize money there is some of the most in natural bodybuilding. Um, but just, the title and the history kind of behind Mr. and Miss America. So I felt a little, more proud of myself, and but the shock and awe of still like accepting that it just happened was still there, still trying to like let it soak in was difficult. Yeah.
So yeah, I hope you didn't go back that night for that show, or did you? Or wait, no, I think you might have
So
said you were flying out like the next morning or something like
yeah,
that.
I flew out early next
I
morning at
think
like
I think
5 in
I
the
do
morning.
remember you said that. Yeah. So so no rest for the wicked, right?
Yeah, a couple we went back to the hotel. We were staying at a different hotel, my friend and I, and then a couple hours of sleep, and then he was kind enough to drive me back to the Philly airport for
Okay.
the early morning flight.
Okay. Again, another whirlwind weekend. Got finally back home, back to Philly, back to Arizona, and and then what? Like what was like? Did you just go straight to the gym again?
I think I may have, probably.
I love it.
One of the only one, yeah, I think I did again do the same thing I did from the Yorton, came home,
I know
and
the drill
went to
now,
the
right?
gym. Yeah.
Sort of thing. Okay. Okay. And then similarly, are you again like now what? Like did you think about WNBF Worlds or like, that we're jumping ahead here, but were how did you decide to continue? Again, I mean, going back months, you're just like, I made it another week, another month, and so
Yeah,
how
it
did that?
turned into like a 6 months of like dieting, like or
Yeah.
staying like stage lean from June all the way to November, which
Yeah.
thinking back on it seems like ridiculously long.
What
Um,
was your weight range during that time?
So I think my first show I competed, I only know the weight of like what I was fasted in the morning of the
Yeah.
show. So on stage I would be obviously a little bit more with food and
Yeah, yeah.
water in me. But I think for that first show, the NPC show in June, I think I was probably 139
Okay.
or so. The second show I was maybe a pound down,
Yeah.
137. A couple weeks later, for the show where I won my natural pro card with the OCB, I was probably 135 or so. And then I kind of just hung out around that 135, 133 range
Yeah.
um,
To
from
the Mr.
like
America.
August on. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you didn't, and then so you, yeah, jumping to the between Mr. America and Worlds, you didn't continue to dig at all. You just kind of like let me hold a look.
Yeah, I didn't really dig any deeper. I just kind of
Yeah.
tried to um because I was like navigating new waters. Like I thought, okay, I knew how to get to stage shape, but then it made me, I was like, well, do I know how to hold stage shape?
Yeah.
So I was like,
That's not
that
that's not
period
easy.
from, yeah, that period from like Yorton to Mr. America to Worlds, I was like, think if I had to think ahead, I was nervous about like, how am I going to navigate, hanging out in this like 6 week period between shows. And so that was a little bit, but I just kind of stuck on my plan and just there was maybe like a once I had that time period from Mr. America to Worlds, there was like that week and a half after Mr. America where I did eat a little bit more at maintenance, but my weight didn't really jump up. It was just more of like steady. Um, but I did that for a little bit, but then it was just kind of keeping just kind of holding that weight right around there.
Okay. Okay. And then I drove you down another path. But my original question is how did you decide to compete with the WNBF?
Yeah, so to compete with the WNBF there was a show so Mr. America was in October, right?
Yeah, right around the 9th or so, something like that. It's around that date every year. So I just know that.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah,
there was a local natural show that would be happening where I was in Arizona in September 17th or something. It was called the Phoenician Classic with the WNBF.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
and
because you have to
again, it was,
qualify for Worlds, even
yeah.
amateur. Yeah.
So I was like, well, it would kind of be cool because I thought, oh, well, there's Worlds and the Natural Olympia are kind of close together in November, but I don't know if I'm going to be in shape then, but let's just see. And so there was that September show, and again, after Mr. America, I just stuck to my plan.
Yeah.
For some reason, there was never a thought to like go right into the off season. I was always enticed, I guess, just enough by these like shows to like
Right there.
stay
Yeah.
on plan. Um, and it wasn't extremely difficult for me to really stay on plan. It was just I would be doing what I was doing anyways, even if I wasn't competing, I would just be eating more food. So it wasn't that difficult for me to go, okay, I can do this next show in September. It's another 4 weeks. Um, so I did that show, which then qualified me for the Amateur Worlds. I did that show in September, and I thought I still was unsure if I wanted to do Worlds, but I thought let's just see what happens. And again, it was like a
Oh,
last minute
why not do
sign up
another,
for
right?
that.
Yeah, yeah. So you did an IMBF show. It sounds like it was locally. I'm guessing. Did you compete women's bodybuilding there? I'm guessing there wasn't a high competitor count there because
No, it
you
was
hadn't won a
me and
pro
one
card.
other
Okay.
competitor for women's bodybuilding. So I wasn't eligible to get a pro card
Yeah.
before going to Worlds, just because I think there need to be 5 women or something. And I even like tried to look at other shows. Some were happening in California, but no shows before Worlds, I don't think would have qualified me as a women's bodybuilder pro.
This is the show to qualify me for Worlds. Then essentially was kind of the
Yeah.
thought. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so um going into Worlds, did you make a similar trip just day before or
Yeah, so for Worlds, there was the polygraph and all that needed to happen. And
yeah.
so I flew in the same day, Friday, I think it was, like a couple hours before, went right to the host hotel, to do the polygraph, hung out there, and then the athletes meeting, and then the next day was the amateur show.
Okay, okay. And again, what were your expectations going into Worlds? Were you thinking like, okay, I'm gonna win amateur Worlds for sure, or like, were you still like
No, I didn't. I mean, I planned my trip as if I would compete both days,
compete both
you
days? Yeah,
know.
I like that
Um,
setup, by the way. But yeah, yeah,
yeah, and I thought that was like I would probably have not done it had you not been able to compete as a pro the next day. I mean, maybe I would have, but I was like, oh, that's cool. If you win, you can compete right as the
yeah,
next day. So I didn't have any expectations, even though you could think, oh, well, you're a pro, you're competing against amateurs. How could you not really? But I just thought, hopefully I'll win. And then backstage again, it was kind of the same thing. I saw these girls and I thought, wow, some of these girls look really shredded and are really good. And
yeah,
again, I didn't really know, but
yeah, yeah. So that obviously went in your favor, the amateur. So competed the next day. What was that like competing back to back days?
yeah, so it was it was kind of just like competing one day, honestly. I
Yeah,
didn't, because being like coaching myself, I don't have like a specific thing. I'm kind of just still figuring everything out. So anyone who's
yeah,
done like their first competition season can relate. Even though I'm winning shows, I'm still like that newbie. Like if you can
yeah,
remember your first time competing and all of that. And so it's kind of that same thing I'm going through. So um, I was a little bit nervous, I was worried that after I won, like what if I look worse? Will I be judged? Will they be, because they've already seen me, now what if I look worse? Then they could maybe subconsciously go, oh, well, we saw her, she was better yesterday. Now she looks a little watery or something. So things like that were kind of going through my head.
What did you
like
do
little
nutritionally for that then? How did you manage that nutritionally?
so I pre-cooked all my chicken and traveled with my chicken, and then I brought like rice cakes, and I ate a little bit more carbs this time around, and um drank a little bit more water. Like for the Yorton Cup, I think I was probably a little dehydrated there. Um I had a little bit of like cramping going on backstage and stuff. So like in between these shows, like I did have those like weeks to kind of play with things and figure out. I still don't know that I brought my absolute best look to the stage, just based off of how I looked, at home, and obviously lighting's different and things, but um yeah, I just kind of tried to like replicate what I did the day before and just hope that the look stuck kind of.
Yeah, and would you say the looks, I mean, obviously did well, but would you say it was pretty similar look both days?
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to tell really, and I but I do think maybe similar look. I don't know. I'd have to defer to you maybe, or someone who saw or was in the audience maybe, but
I didn't catch the amateur show, so
okay.
I think I might have seen photos. I don't recall offhand, but um yeah, I only caught you on the pro side.
Yeah,
So
I think
where
it
you
was
look
probably
obviously really
pretty
sharp and
similar look, I think.
yeah. I mean, I had you winning whenever I was talking with Christine. Um, but so obviously that one again went in your favor. So what again? Repeating my same question, what was that like? Like, okay, now I won Worlds, which I don't. It's worth noting. I don't know if anyone has ever won Amateur Worlds and then won Pro Worlds the next day. I don't think that's ever been done. That the Amateur Worlds winner has ever won the pro title. So,
Yeah,
props to you for that.
I've been hearing that a lot. I'm not sure either, but I'm that's yeah, again, it's hard to take in that I'm maybe the first one to do that, but this time around was probably, the easiest for me to experience and, actually soak in and feel like excited and really proud and happy with what I had done. It seemed like the atmosphere here, um, backstage, especially on the pro show day, Lisa Lum, competing with her, that was amazing. I mean, backstage,
Awesome. Yeah.
yeah, she was incredible. She was like a mom to everyone, like getting everyone for pictures, and just really like making me appreciate being
Yeah.
there and like really bringing everyone together. So that was like super nice. And then I at Worlds, it seemed like there was a much greater sense of like community. And a lot of people at this show was like one of the only shows where I actually like was able to like people came up to me, like people from the audience, and you know shared how I was like motivating to them. And so like that was really like insane to hear, that I was doing that for like some
Yeah.
girls, and like that I was becoming this like figurehead for them and like somebody to look up to. So, but I was able to like hear those things and kind of take those things in more, and that made me like appreciate and like be in the moment of this like win more so than any of the others.
Being kind of isolated where you're there in your own world and everything else is just going on around you, sort of thing. You feel like you're actually connected to the people around you a little bit more, that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
it sounds like the WNBF fostered that with the athletes that are there, and people coming from around the world. I know, and uh it's a time when a lot of people. I have not had a chance yet to go, but I'll likely be there next year. But connect with all these people through social media, and everyone comes together. It seems like a great atmosphere from everything I've heard.
Yeah. Yeah, and like networked, I think, and was able to meet more
Yeah.
people there and be in person with them. And then like the social media from that show probably seemed also like some of the biggest from uh all the shows that I did as well.
Yeah, they did a really good job and helped us a lot with our coverage and news, being able to just churn out the winners and everything like
Yeah.
that. So yeah,
Yeah,
they
you guys
did
are
they
like
did a
in
really good
real
job.
time, like putting up everything. I mean, you guys are like insane with that. It's like so
When
cool to
when
see
you say
that.
you guys, it's mostly Leroy. Like props to Leroy for that. I can't really.
Yeah,
I maybe
shout
sent
outs
him a
to him
couple
and you
things,
and
but Leroy,
the whole
yeah,
all of you guys who run Natty News. I mean, you guys are insane with all that and highlighting everybody. It's amazing. So
trying to. Thank you. Um, so yeah, and I another accolade. I don't think anyone has. I think the last person to win both the Yorton, this is worth noting, win both the Yorton and WNBF Worlds that I know of, unless somebody can comment below if this is inaccurate, is Brian Whitaker. So kind of a legend in the game. So to do that and add a Mr. America title on top of that, that's just wild, right?
yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know where to go from there. But so with that, obviously you've networked a little bit more within the industry. You've had a long competitive season. What is kind of your headspace around, what's next and what are you doing right now? That sort of thing. You probably had a little bit of time to reflect. Now you've had a few weeks from Worlds, like as to what the hell just happened the last 6 months, but curious what your headspace is around that and then what you're thinking, next, what you're
Going
gonna
for
do. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's still kind of is hard for me to take in. Um, I think it's just part of it is just I'm so like ingrained and obsessive about my at-home routine in going to the gym,
I feel
in
that.
training, in the meals, and so it's kind of still hard for me to like break from that. Um, so I've just kept with what I've been doing and except
With
obviously now
more
I'm
food, I
eating
hope,
more.
right? Yeah,
Yeah, with
yeah.
more food.
You eat 4,000 calories again.
I'm at
Probably not
like
quite.
3,500 a day right now, and then some days are at like 4,200. Eventually I'll
That's,
probably get it back up, hopefully to where every day is around 4,200.
does that even
Um,
feel like a lot of food for you or not really? I mean, right,
no,
I guess now it probably doesn't because you're coming off a competitive
these
season, but
couple weeks I think my stomach has been adjusting to it because I've kind of felt bloated, after
yeah,
some of the meals, and I think my stomach is getting used to like the consistent food volume because I did
yeah,
have high days like that during prep, but they weren't as consistent as they are now.
yeah.
But yeah, when I was dieting, like the lowest my calories got probably like those last few months on I was probably averaging around 2,600 even on the diet. So still, I think quite a substantial amount, especially for a female competitor. But
Higher than me, so a lot
yeah,
higher
and
than me,
I
even.
think part of that
So,
is the like I train, very voluminous training and a lot of training and twice a day most days. So I think that has something to do with it as well. But
high expenditure, but that's still a lot. That's wild. That's wild.
yeah, so
Um,
soaking it in has kind of still been difficult. I'm trying to reflect and appreciate, like, but it's hard for me because this is kind of all I know. It's even though it's my first, like, not to sound arrogant, but winning. So it's just kind of like what's happened. Um, and I didn't plan for any of this, so it's hard to like kind of accept. And it's just like I'm so regimented about my routine. And before I was like this even before competing, and it almost became a point. I'll mention this briefly and then kind of what's next. But it almost became like these shows were almost like a disruption to my routine that they kind of like I almost was annoyed by them doing them in a way sometimes. Um, like I know some bodybuilders become more obsessive because of bodybuilding, but it's almost like doing these shows kind of broke me out of my obsession with bodybuilding. It broke me out of the routine that I had that was so
back
strict.
day to day. Yeah, yeah.
And so some of these late, especially the later shows as the diet went on, I was like, I would get into a groove at home back, after the Yorton, I would get into a really nice groove, and I was like, oh, this show's gonna throw my training off. But it's like I'm training for these shows, so it's kind of like, I don't know, it's just the way my brain was wired. And it doesn't make any sense, you know, because otherwise I'm just doing this to what end? To no end. This training is like fruitless if I don't compete or, you know, but that's kind of where my head was at with some of these shows. So I think that's also a part of it. That's why I would get in as late as possible and get home as soon as possible so I could get right back to back to the routine. Um, so I think that's part of the reason it's been difficult for me to soak things in because I don't really know how to stop my routine and take a break from it, to let it soak in. I'm trying to take more time off from the gym and chill out and be with my animals more because I kind of had to neglect them and walking them and my cats and all that and get to spend as much time with them. Um, so I think I'm being a little bit better, but going back to what's next, I'm not really sure. Um, I'm hoping to compete and replicate, I guess, this for next year and maybe even have a few more titles. Um, but I just don't know, really.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
I was gonna ask if you were gonna plan on taking an extended off season or if we're competing next year. So,
yeah, so before all of this, I was
but
thinking
sounds
like
like yeah,
before all of these like winning all these shows, I was for sure like I'm gonna take a year. I need a year. I need to put on size. That's the feedback I was sort of getting in the beginning from the NPC.
yeah,
Um, you know, they, I guess, were fairly unimpressed by my physique and said, just come back with 10 or 15 pounds, you know, and so I was kind of disheartened at the beginning of competing because that's the feedback I was getting, which makes sense because, you know, they're familiar with enhanced physiques.
yeah.
Um,
Probably add 10 pounds, but not in like a year or two. Like you're talking
yeah,
five,
I don't know
five,
that I even
five
have
years.
10 pounds, and if I do, yeah, the timeline was totally ridiculous
Yeah,
that they were saying
yeah,
I should do it in. Um, So that was beginning before doing all these shows. I was thinking, okay, well, yeah, I'll take a year off, you know, I'll get better, and then I'll come back 2025, especially because, you know, I dieted for like a year and a half for this. So I thought, well, I need like at least a year to diet, right? To get in shape. So how am I going to compete next year and do all of that? But um, as I kind of competed and won the Yorton and then Miss America and now Worlds, I've kind of learned more and learned how to kind of maintain that stage weight and not feel so terrible being that lean. And so it got me thinking um, that maybe I don't need to get so high up in weight again. So before, you know, I was up at like 165 and, you know, stage weight was in the 130s, so that's 30 pounds. And I know realistically, I don't probably need to get back up as high as I did. So I was my cat, I don't know if you can see her climbing the bed. Yeah, she's doing some stunts up there.
I saw the
Um,
shirt moving. Yeah,
yes, so I'm kind of distracted. She's like up in the, I don't know if you guys can see that.
oh my
Way
gosh,
up
she's way up there. It's
top.
funny.
Yeah. So, I don't know what she's doing. So yeah, I was thinking that after doing these shows that maybe I would try and I think it would be cool and I do think I can improve, you know, my presentation that I enough that like I don't need to actually gain size in order to be a better bodybuilder per se. Um, you know, I think I could be better just by actually practicing posing and all of that. And so even if I wasn't able to make, you know, muscular size improvements this like off season, I still think I could come back and do these same run of shows next year and be better just based off of presentation. So I'm hopeful to do these shows and do the same thing 2024, but I'm just gonna kind of play things by year and probably make last minute decisions again. So I know people probably want to know and you want to know, and I wish
No, I
I
mean,
knew.
I'm curious, but I mean, I'm not pressuring you to make a decision now or to know.
Yeah, I wish I knew, but I kind of don't really think that far ahead, and I just kind of take things as they come and do it in stride.
You're doing the right thing now by intentionally adding weight and getting back, to a slightly healthier, uh, body weight, all that sort of stuff. So, have you? I guess before I want to ask that, how are you managing that mentally? Is that tough for you or no?
So there is a little bit of body dysmorphia, kicking in. I think most bodybuilders have
Yeah,
that,
I've
especially
experienced that.
after, that first time seeing yourself lean. But I'm trying not to be, I would like to think I've never been so connected to my physical look, even though it kind of as a bodybuilder doesn't make sense. You would think, how could you not be? But I always am like in a hoodie at the gym training, sweats on, like cloaked up. So it's not like I'm looking at myself or seeing myself every day or like I was before. Um, I would in prep, you check your abs here and there and see the shoulder striations and things. And, I'm noticing some of those things start to go away a little bit, but I try to just, hoodie on, cover up and just, it's kind of how I was before. So it's not like, it's a little difficult, but, I'm trying to just, gain the weight. And I know that's what I need to do to be better and to be healthy. And so it's been a little bit difficult, but not too bad.
Gotcha. It sounds like mentally you just know like this is what I need to do and this is the right play, right? And kind of disconnecting that. At least for me, it's like disconnecting that, like uh that show look is the ideal, right? It's like, okay, that's the ideal for that
Mhm.
sort of purpose versus like, okay, this is not the ideal for looking and feeling good in general, right? And then performing well. At least that's the way I approach it. Like
Yeah, have you been competing for a while?
I competed in
Going through
2018
that?
and in 2021.
And did you struggle with anything post or you kind of were able to get right back?
Yeah, I struggled more in 2018, I would say, than 2021. I struggled a little bit more on the food side in 2021. Like once the blinders came off, my appetite was just insatiable.
Oh, yeah.
So it took me about 6 weeks to get settled back into like an off season because a lot of what you talked about, like operating just like in a routine and robotically, like that very much resonates with me. But it took me about 6 weeks to kind of get like my head on me, like from the food perspective. Training was fine, but yeah, and it was a little bit of a challenge just chasing lines for so long, and now it's like, okay, now this is not the objective anymore. So, but once I get settled back into like an off season mode, I can get back into like just a robotic, just execute and just do it. So, yeah, for me, it takes a little bit of time, but eventually I get into a rhythm where I'm like, okay, this is normal now.
Yeah,
I
and
can
that
just
become robotic thing, I actually made a hoodie and it says become robotic on it
oh
because
my
that's how
god. Send me that link and I will buy that. And Christine will definitely buy that too. Christine, I guarantee she's listening right now, or she's gonna be
Okay,
listening
yeah,
whenever
because
this goes live.
I'm
So
just gonna make merch that says become robotic because I feel like that's what I've become. I'm just like this machine and just is like,
Christine actually coined it. She constantly sends me stuff and or tags me and just says hashtag Team Robot. So you could be part of Team Robot, the three of
yeah,
us.
for sure. I'll send you both. I'll see if I can send you guys with that. Yeah.
Yeah, send it along and I will buy it, and I know Christine will buy it too. So, but anyways, I know that we're a little bit over time that we had originally laid out, but we went through a lot. So I appreciate
Yeah,
you
that's
going
fine.
through everything. And before we jump off, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, so I do have a YouTube that I don't really know how to people can find me on there. I'm not too active, but it does exist. Probably just my name, Natalie Hays, Hays, but I'm mainly on Instagram, at NPH_fit, and just I try to post content on there. I'm not the best with that, but I hope people stick around and can find me on there and message me if they want or have questions or anything. So Instagram is nph_fit.
Very good. Natalie Hays, the best natural female bodybuilder in the world right now. Thanks for coming on, Natalie.
Thank you.
And if you like this episode, subscribe. Let us know what you think about this episode, future episodes, things for Natalie, anything for Natalie's cat. And we'll see you in the next one.